This week we read from Parshat Va'et-Chanan, the second Parsha in Sefer Devarim. Devarim literally means spoken things. So this is the book of spoken things. And this Parsha continues the discourse that Moses began in last week's Parsha, speaking to the Israelites at the banks of the Jordan River as they prepare to enter Eretz Yisrael. And Moses retells their journey, recounting several parts along the way that we've already read in other books of the Torah. This week will be no different, as he recalls how it came to be that he could not pass along into Eretz Yisrael with the rest of the Israelites. And then he begins to recount the laws received by the people at Har Sinai. He doesn't call it Mount Sinai. In the book of Devarim, it's called Horeb. And beginning with the very first commands that our people receive at Har Sinai, the 10 Commandments. But sometimes you remember things a little differently the second time around. Moses does so here. And in repeating the 10 Commandments, there are a few subtle changes. And so when we have a story or we have a law that we have somewhere else in the Torah repeated, it gives us some valuable insights into our traditions based on what's similar to or what's different from the content that it repeats. Our sages often tried to find what are the messages. There must be multiple messages going on if we have something that's told in a slightly different way. If you're a modern scholar of biblical literature, then you might be saying, okay, there were different people at different times who wrote different versions of this text. Maybe something had changed, and maybe something was important to them that wasn't important before. And so I want to look at one particular command that's very different the second time around than the first. And it's the command that we're observing right now, Shabbat. And in the very first iteration of Aseret HaDibrot, of the 10 Commandments, we're told to remember the Shabbat and to keep it holy. For in 6 days God made heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. And therefore Adonai blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. This is not the same language we find as Moses retells the story of the 10 Commandments. From the very start, the verb is different. He doesn't say remember the Sabbath. He says shamor, safeguard the Sabbath. And then continues to say that the Sabbath is not just for you. It's also for your animals. It's also for the stranger that dwells in your midst. It's also for everyone who works for you. It's for your children. It's for your workers. And it says at the very end of that part, a beautiful phrase, Lama'an yanuach avdecha va'amatecha kamocha, so that your workers, your servants, can rest just the way that you do. And it has an entirely different justification. Moses continues not by talking about how God creates the world in 6 days and rests on the seventh. Moses says, remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and your God Adonai freed you from there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, your God Adonai has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. Our ancestors make some beautiful comparisons of these two instances of the command for Shabbat. The Midrash says that Zachor and Shamor were spoken at the very same time in one utterance, and that our ancestors could hear it, even though God said both words simultaneously. It's a beautiful thought, but it sort of misses something with the language. Because the first time we're told about Shabbat, we're told Zachor. And then it says, this is what you're supposed to remember. Remember that God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. It makes sense. The second time when Moses is repeating that same command, Moses says, guard it. Keep it safe. Because this is not just a day of rest for you. It's a day of rest for everyone. We're guarding it because it doesn't just have historical significance. It doesn't just have religious significance. It also has civic significance. Lama'an yanuach avdacha v'amatecha kamocha, so that your servants may rest just the same as you do. This is a reminder that we're not allowed to do what was done unto us. Right after we're reminded, you were slaves in the land of Egypt. You know what it's like to work every day of your lives. You are not allowed to make somebody work every day of theirs. Complete rest is not just a sacred right that we are meant to enjoy. It's not just a sacred task that we are meant to perform. It is a sacred responsibility that we are required to give to everyone, even the stranger in our midst. One of the reasons I love these Shabbats at the beach is because everyone is here. The waves and the sand and the wind, they're the same for everyone. Doesn't matter what race you are, what gender, what ethnicity, what nationality, what economic background. The sea still tastes the same. The sun still feels the same. That's what Shabbat is meant to be. It's supposed to be the same for everyone, which means that everybody is meant to have the opportunity to relax without worrying about how they're going to pay their rent, without wondering about where their next meal is coming from, or where they'll sleep for the night. It means that everyone should have the opportunity to share time with family, no matter where that family came from or what that family looks like. It means that everyone should feel safe and secure in their country, in their city, in their houses of worship, and in their bodies, no matter who they are or who they choose to be. This is the Shabbat that our Parsha demands, one of sacred rest, but also a sacred obligation to ensure that everyone gets to enjoy that same sacred rest. And so we pray that this is the Shabbat that we observe, the Shabbat that we give not only to Jews everywhere, but to our fellow Americans and to everyone in search of rest. Shabbat Shalom.